The history books tell you the story begins here, with a motorcade, a wrong turn, and an assassin waiting on a street corner in Bosnia. The victim? Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne. The date? June 28, 1914. The assassin? Gavrilo Princip, a desperate Serbian nationalist. This, they say, was the spark that ignited the inferno. But this is where the popular story ends, and where the real story of the Great War begins. Because the truth is, the assassination didn't start the war. It merely exposed a crisis that had been decades in the making. For years, the major powers of Europe had been locked in a deadly competition fueled by greed, paranoia, and the unshakable certainty that war was not a tragedy to be avoided, but a solution to be embraced. They had loaded the continent with enough economic tension, political rivalry, and rigid military planning to ensure that when the spark finally landed, the explosion would be total. This is the story of the true origins of World War I. To find the true origins of the Great War, we must zoom out from the dusty street of Sarajevo to a map painted almost entirely in imperial colors. For over a century, Great Britain stood as the undisputed master of the globe. But a new power was rising, the German Empire. Germany's economy was growing faster than any in Europe, and its ambitious leader, Kaiser Wilhelm II, demanded Germany's place in the sun. This led to the naval arms race. The architect of the German challenge, Admiral Alfred von Tirpitz, aimed to build a fleet so powerful that Britain would fear attacking it. Britain responded with the launch of HMS Dreadnought in 1906, resetting the staggering cost of the race to zero. The strategic reality was this: the British obsession with the German high seas fleet was not simply about defense. The Royal Navy was the insurance policy for Britain's vast global trade routes. German battleships posed an existential threat to the flow of goods and capital that kept the British economy alive. This arms race was, in its deepest sense, an economic war waged with steel and coal. Meanwhile, Germany's land rival, France, fueled by revenge or revanche for the lost territories of Alsace-Lorraine, was pushed into a reluctant defensive embrace with Russia. The naval race created the animosity. The political necessity of mutual defense created the structure. And this structure ensured that a crisis involving any one member meant a crisis for all. Fear of the rival bloc compelled every major nation to lock itself into a rigid, interlocking system of alliances. On one side stood the Triple Alliance, Imperial Germany and the aging Austro-Hungarian Empire. On the other stood the Triple Entente, a loose, complex web linking France, Russia, and Great Britain. The fatal flaw was that these alliances were not flexible safety nets. They were rigid, interlocking manacles containing fatal contradictions. For example, Russia had treaties obligating it to defend its Slavic brethren, Serbia. Germany had a treaty obligating it to defend Austria-Hungary from any Russian aggression. The instant Austria-Hungary moved against Serbia, two separate alliance systems were activated, pulling Europe towards the abyss. Diplomats believed this system created a balance of power. They were desperately wrong. It created a balance of terror. A dispute between Austria and Serbia was no longer a local affair. It instantly became a confrontation between Vienna and St. Petersburg, between Berlin and Paris. The Balkan Peninsula was the spark factory. At the heart of this chaos was the tiny, fiercely independent kingdom of Serbia, which championed Pan-Slavism. This dream was an existential nightmare for the vast, decrepit Austro-Hungarian Empire, whose leaders were gripped with an intense paranoia
that if Serbia succeeded, the whole multinational state would shatter like glass. The true motive for war lay in the fact that many high-ranking officials and generals in Vienna wanted war. They saw war with Serbia not as a defense, but as a drastic, surgical measure, a unifying event that would crush Serbia and scare their own restive ethnic minorities back into line. War was their last desperate hope to save their collapsing empire from within. When Gavrilo Princip's bullets struck the Archduke, they handed the hardliners in Vienna the pretext they had desperately sought for years. The spark had landed. The powder keg was ready. With the Archduke buried, Vienna turned to Berlin, desperately seeking an unconditional promise of support. On July 5, 1914, the Kaiser and his chancellor gave Vienna exactly what they asked for: a blank check. This was an unconditional guarantee. Germany would back Austria-Hungary, even if it meant risking a full-scale war with Russia. This promise instantly escalated the crisis from a regional spat to a potential world war. The strategic rationale for Germany's recklessness was that their powerful military leadership saw this crisis as a strategic opportunity. They feared the future, calculating that Russia was modernizing at a terrifying rate and would soon be unbeatable. Therefore, if war with Russia was truly inevitable, the German leadership concluded it was better to have it now, while they were at the height of their military advantage, than to wait. The blank check was a cynical, preemptive gamble. Germany deliberately pushed Austria-Hungary to attack Serbia, willing to burn down the continent to secure their future dominance. With the Kaiser's assurance, Austria-Hungary delivered an ultimatum to Serbia on July 23rd with a non-negotiable deadline, 48 hours. The demands were designed not to be accepted, but to be rejected. The most critical demand required Austro-Hungarian officials to participate in the suppression of the subversive movement in Serbia, effectively forcing Serbia to surrender its sovereignty. The tragedy of missed peace occurred when, despite the humiliation, Serbia offered a staggering concession. On July 25th, Serbia accepted 8 out of the 10 demands and offered to submit the remaining 2 to international arbitration. Diplomacy could have worked, but Vienna didn't want a diplomatic victory. They wanted a war. The Serbian concessions were declared unsatisfactory. On July 28, 1914, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. The alliance system snapped taut. Russia had to mobilize.
Tsar Nicholas II, under immense pressure, initially ordered a partial mobilization against Austria-Hungary only. But the Russian generals insisted that their complex railway timetable did not allow for a partial mobilization. They told the Tsar it was all or nothing. The crucial military reality was that in every major European capital, mobilization was war. The sheer complexity of calling up millions of reservists meant that generals had crafted plans with the precision of a Swiss watch. If they deviated, they risked losing the war in the first 2 weeks. Under this pressure, the Tsar signed the order for full Russian mobilization against both Austria-Hungary and Germany. Berlin declared war on Russia on August 1, 1914. But Germany's entire plan, the Schlieffen Plan, dictated that mobilization against Russia meant, by definition, an immediate invasion of France. The diplomats had lost control. The game of war had begun. The Schlieffen Plan was Germany's master strategy. Deliver a lightning-fast knockout blow to France in just 42 days, primarily via a massive sweeping movement, the right hook, through neutral Belgium,
then turn east to face Russia. The fatal flaws of the plan were immediate. Flaw 1. Germany underestimated the ferocity of the Belgian resistance. Flaw 2. The sheer logistical demands placed on the marching troops were impossible. Flaw 3. Command panic. General Helmuth von Moltke made the fatal decision to weaken the right hook, pulling critical divisions away out of caution. This action fatally compromised the entire plan. Germany's gamble achieved the very thing it sought to avoid, a two-front war against the entire Triple Entente. After the invasion of Belgium, the ultimate decision rested in London. Germany's invasion was a clear violation of the 1839 Treaty of London, which guaranteed Belgian neutrality, providing the perfect moral justification for war. But the true strategic motive for Britain was far more elemental: naval security. If Germany controlled the Belgian coast, the Channel ports, the German high seas fleet would gain immediate, easy access to the English Channel, posing an existential crisis to the British Empire's jugular vein. The violation of the treaty was the excuse. The protection of the Empire's security was the reason. When Germany ignored the British deadline, the final declaration came on August 4th. The war that began in the Balkans had become a global conflict. Yet as millions of men mobilized, there was not fear, but euphoria. Across every nation, the naive, dangerous belief took hold. The war would be quick, glorious, and decisive. The declarations of war were met with a tidal wave of euphoria. This was the great illusion, the firm, universal belief that the war would be over by Christmas. The hidden truth behind this unity was that it was carefully orchestrated. Governments understood that a sustained war required total national commitment, and they used intense propaganda to silence internal dissent. In Germany, it was the Burgfrieden. In France, the l'Union Sacrée. The propaganda masked a profound lack of preparation for a long war. Meanwhile, the German right hook was within 30 miles of Paris. But the exhaustion of the marching men and the error of General Moltke weakening his forces combined to halt the momentum. The high hopes of August were about to collide with the brutal realities of industrial warfare. The enthusiastic armies of August ran straight into the industrial killing power of the 20th century. The first major clashes, like the battles of the frontiers in the West, saw Napoleonic-style frontal assaults run straight into the devastating fire of the machine gun. A single machine gun crew could inflict the casualties of 1,000 riflemen. In just the first 2 weeks of fighting in the West, France suffered over 200,000 casualties. The shocking reality was that the incredible speed of the casualty rate, far outpacing previous wars, immediately terrified military planners. The illusion of a quick, clean victory was being drowned in blood. Faced with overwhelming firepower, the troops did the only thing they could do to survive. They burrowed into the earth. The age of movement was over. The era of the trenches had begun.
By September 1914, the German armies were within 30 miles of Paris. But the German commander, General Alexander von Kluck, made the critical error of veering southeast, exposing a massive 40-mile gap. The French High Command seized the moment, even famously requisitioning 1,200 Parisian taxicabs, the Taxi de la Marne, to rush fresh reservists to the front. The joint Franco-British forces plunged into the exposed flank, during the First Battle of the Marne. The fatal command failure was on the German side. General Helmuth von Moltke, hundreds of miles away and relying on flawed reports, authorized the unthinkable, a general retreat. The retreat from the Marne was a catastrophic strategic defeat. It proved that the Schlieffen Plan was dead. Moltke reportedly told the Kaiser, "Your Majesty, we have lost the war." The German forces pulled back to the River Aisne, and the Allies followed. The only way to survive the relentless firepower was to dig. After the Marne, neither side could break the enemy's defensive line. There began the race to the sea, a series of continuous, desperate maneuvers where each army tried to outflank the other to the north, extending the lines towards the English Channel. This futile race culminated in the devastating First Battle of Ypres. The final strategic consequence of the race to the sea was the definitive death blow to the blank check gamble. Germany was now irrevocably committed to a protracted two-front war. The armies could run no further. By December 1914, the lines were continuous. 400 miles of trenches carved into the earth from the Swiss border to the North Sea, separated by no man's land. The war that had begun with geopolitical tension had devolved into a massive, static siege, a continuous battle line where millions would live, fight, and die for the gain of mere yards. By Christmas 1914, the Great War had found its form. The war that was meant to be quick, glorious, and decisive had become total, anonymous, and inconclusive. The cost of the first few months was staggering. Over 1 million soldiers had been killed or wounded on the Western Front alone. The enduring tragedy of the war's origin lies here. The generals and the politicians had become prisoners of their own systems. They had created alliances that forced escalation and military plans that made retreat impossible. The war started not because one man wanted to rule the world, but because a complex web of fear, ambition, economic rivalry, and inflexible timetables left no room for diplomacy to survive. The system itself was fundamentally flawed. The men who entered the trenches in 1914 were the last romantics of the 19th century. The men who survived were the first grim realists of the 20th century. The lamps were indeed going out across Europe, and the 4 years of darkness that followed began here in the catastrophic, unstoppable fall of the dominoes in the summer of 1914. If you've felt the weight of this story, there are countless more waiting to be told. Subscribe to War Tales, where every war has a heartbeat and every soldier's story is remembered.